right, everyone. Welcome back to Project Sapient. We've had an interesting past few weeks with guests that we've had on. Big shout out to our supporters, sponsors. Actually, we'll start with AAA Police Supply. Go head over to their website. That's aaapolicasupply.com for any of your law enforcement needs. Whatever you're looking for, they have it, from ammo all the way down to uniforms, boots, whatever you want. Also use use Sapient 5 as a coupon code to get 10% off your entire order. That is aaapolicasupply.com. And again, use Sapient 5 as your discount code, so that way you get a discount on the entire order. And of course, Havoc Journal. You guys know I write a lot for Havoc. I think I finally, maybe I did beat Charlie, a founder of Havoc Journal, on the amount of articles I released. I think he's even said that. And don't forget also my book called The Resolute Path. Head over to Amazon. Please, share it, buy it, send it. Probably a good stocking stuffer since we're coming towards the Christmas season. But yeah, by all means, head over. I'll put all those links in the show notes and to include additional links to other sponsors and supporters. I'm actually really excited today to have a distinguished guest on, I'll call him. And he brings 42 years of dedicated service in the Massachusetts National Guard. And he is retired Sergeant Major Joe Young, otherwise known as Mighty Joe Young, has served 42 and a half years total, including 38 years as a full-time technician, 2 years on active duty, and 2.5 years as a traditional M-Day warrior. His military journey began in the infantry for the first 5 years, after which he transitioned to maintenance and logistics, and he retired in 2012. But during his tenure, this good Sergeant Major completed 2 significant deployments to Iraq. The first one from 03 to 04 at Toledo Air Force Base, and the second one was 2005 at Abu Ghraib. Both deployments were 12 months of boots on the ground, showcasing his commitment and resilience in the face of challenging circumstances. After serving 42 years, Joe is honored to say that he has served and walked amongst many heroes. It was a privilege to serve alongside them. And I myself served alongside the Sergeant Major, actually, when he was the first sergeant, I think it was the first sergeant of the 2nd Field Artillery, and he would like to recognize, obviously, his family, his wife, who stood beside him. I think Joe said 51 years married now, which is incredible. And now he's fully retired. Joe dedicates his time to supporting fellow veterans. He actively engages with veterans through Facebook, phone call conversations, in-person meetings, and as a mentor with One Call Away, he focuses on preventing suicide, providing care for veterans and their families. He enjoys hiking, backpacking, with 3/4 of the Appalachian Trail completed, alongside his passion for fly fishing, which helps him manage PTSD, anxiety, and depression. In addition, Joe serves as a ride captain to the Massachusetts Patriot Guard Riders. If you guys don't know who those are, look them up. You will be amazed at some of the things they do. Honoring military veterans, military personnel, veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs during events and memorials. And in closing, for this intro, Joe just would like to say that it was a great ride, lots of up and down, sad moments, great moments, and he wouldn't have missed it for all the money in the world. To me, he embodies that ethos of no one left behind, and pledging to ensure that his commitment carries over to his work with veterans at home. Sergeant Major, how are you, sir?
Good.
I shouldn't say sir. I should say Sergeant Major. We work for a living as NCOs, right?
Roger that.
But man, it's been a long time, and we talk here and there on Facebook and catch up, and it's truly remarkable on when you think about all that time you've spent serving our country. I mean, talk about quite the ride, right, Sergeant Major?
For sure. And my wife and I, like you said, we've been married for 51 years. She was part of that for 40 years, and if it wasn't for her, I would have never, ever made it as far as I made it with my military career. Because there was times when I'd had enough, and I just wanted to say, I'm done, I'm getting out. And she put a boot up my ass and said, no, you're not. So she's as much as part of my success, if not 90% of my success that I made.
I mean, that's sort of the real unsung heroes are the families of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters who, have to endure what we endure, right? They kind of help us with that backpack, so to speak, of everything that we've dealt with, and they carry it with us. Having someone like that, to me, like my wife, and having someone like that makes it easier, right, Joe?
Oh, it definitely does. And the sad part is the National Guard for years and years, they never recognized the families, the wives, the children, the mothers and fathers. It's only been probably since 91 when Desert Storm hit and the Guard started playing a more active role in the defense of the country and stepping up and taking on a bigger role with the active duty forces. And then when after 9/11 and we started sending troops everywhere, the Guard really woke up and started a lot of different groups and stuff and really started to say, we got to take care of the families. We just can't leave them sitting out there alone while their husbands are off. Is it perfect to this day? No, it's not. It's still got a long ways to go, but I'm thankful that there's a lot of good people out there that do take care of the families.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I mean, I came in obviously after September 11th, and even when I came in, the Guard was starting, like it was still not there just yet. And then all of a sudden, as the deployments really ramped up, I started to see a lot more family focus groups type things, get-togethers for families during when soldiers are deployed, stuff like that. So yeah, it was nice to see that the Guard took a more active role to help the families while the soldiers deployed, because last thing we need as deployed soldiers is to think about home problems at home, like bills, whatever else, that our spouses need. I felt that, when we were deployed, obviously I was single, but seeing the other family members or the husbands that were with me kind of have that sigh of relief when they were able to rely on others to help the family.
Exactly. It's like I used to tell people, I said, yeah, we were in a shithole. We were in Iraq, no doubt about it. People wanted to kill us. But to a certain point, we kind of had it easy. We got up in the morning. We had 3 meals a day. We had a roof over our head. All we had to do was worry about, not getting killed that day. And for the most part, our days were pretty good. But back home, you're always wondering, is there enough oil, in the oil tank for the, winter? Is the car running
Yep.
good?
Yep.
She taking care of all the bills. A lot of wives and spouses, period, went through hell while we were deployed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 100%. And like with the married guys in the unit, I would see that, when they would get letters or able to make it to the phones to call home, and you would see it like, damn, like part of it is they wish they were home so they can help do whatever they can, but also they can rely on their fellow soldiers who are back home, kind of guarding the rear, so to speak, in making sure the families are getting taken care of. So that was always a nice thing to see from my perspective.
Yeah, it sure was, and like I said, now there's groups, FRGs, the wives, the spouses get together and they kind of keep tabs on each other. And there's some other groups out there that I know they're nonprofit organizations. Retired Sergeant Major Jimmy Kelly runs one. I can't remember the name of it, but spouses can reach out to him if they're having problems financially. And if he doesn't have it, he puts them in touch with other people. So again, it's really grown since we were overseas.
Yeah, and now, so one thing I really want to talk about is our time overseas, right? So the 102nd, when we deployed in 2005, it's split in half, right? If I remember correctly, they kind of split us up, and half went one part of Iraq, and the other half went to Abu Ghraib. And during that time, obviously, in 2003, 2004, there was this dark cloud over Abu Ghraib, right? And if people don't remember, there was that huge scandal with the treatment of prisoners there by soldiers. Could you kind of go into that a little bit, what that was like for the oncoming unit to basically deal with that shit show as the oncoming unit?
We were very fortunate when we came in. We were the second group, excuse me, The second group to come in since the scandal, there was a unit from the Missouri National Guard that was the Garrison Command Cell, and they had the task of cleaning up the shit show, from day one when they moved in. And they were under quite scrutiny from the higher ranking people over at Baghdad. Even when we were there, we'd have General Brandenburg almost every Sunday would fly in to the FOB, and Colonel Ray and Colonel Bernie Flynn would take him on a personal tour of the complete prison facilities from A to Z. He wanted to see it all. When we got there, the place was in the process of being cleaned up, but there was still a lot of trash and a lot of just war damage and stuff from back in the days when the scandal went off. Nobody ever really picked it up or cleaned it up. I guess you could say it was quite the shithole. But
Yeah.
they did
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
they did a good job of cleaning it up with KBR and some of the other civilian contractors that were there. And when we did the handoff, we just worked with KBR and the other civilian contractors, and we just continued. When we left in 2005, the place looked 100% better.
Yeah, and I remember a couple times we would get updates of stuff that's going on with you guys, and one of obviously the biggest one was the Battle of Abu Ghraib that you guys were there for. If you can kind of go into how that came about, and sort of just the boots on the ground kind of view of what you dealt with when that kicked off.
Well, we were myself. I just come back from the DFAC with a bunch of the guys from the 102nd. We'd had dinner, and I was in my PT clothes, just sitting on my bunk, my laptop, reading the local newspaper from home. And then all of a sudden you heard this rocket or this like a jet going over. We figured it's just the Air Force, flying low. Then you heard the first explosion and you go, whoops, that's not a jet. So next thing you heard was the alarm going off, and somebody on the bullhorns over the the FOB, this is not a drill, this is not a drill. So we grabbed all our gear and stuff, and we all met together in one central area in our living quarters. One of the other master sergeants, Sergeant McQuaid, had the whiteboard going, and then people just started calling out, call signs, and he was writing them down, where they were, this and that. And we accounted for all of our people but one, and then eventually they found where he was. So we were at 100% at the time. You could hear more explosions going on. You could hear rounds coming in. You could start hearing small arms fire. And the next thing we had to do, we had to get Colonel Ray over to the jock. So Jimmy Locke runs out, grabs an up-armored Humvee, swings around right to front our living quarters. We open up the doors, a little protection on the up-armored Humvees, and we get Colonel Ray off into the Humvee, and Jimmy gets him over to the jock and drops him off there so he can go be with the battle captain and do what they got to do. And then Jimmy comes back, and we're all together, and now we're just kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And you can hear the battle start to develop. And you're hearing small arms fire from our side, from their side. Our little Motorola radios that we carried started coming alive, people talking, this and that's going on. One of the towers had a 249 machine gun go down, and myself, Phil Rand, Chris Yager, we all went and got to our storage vault, the garrison storage vault, and we grabbed some weapons, 249. I think they might have grabbed a 50 cal, and they got in a Humvee and they went to one of the towers, and all this incomings coming in, they climbed up into the tower and swapped out the broken weapons, and got the Marines back up and going. Meantime, while all that's going on, a V-bed tries to get up against the wall on the other end of the top fob, but we don't know if we blew it up, he blew it up, or if it was remote controlled and they blew it up, but it didn't take the wall down. It made a mess. His body came over the wall in pieces here, there, and everywhere. But the big thing was they weren't successful in getting the wall down. Then, while the battle's going on, Master Sergeant McQuaid gets a phone call. The Marines are running low on ammunition up on the towers and on the walls. And he looks over at me and asks me if I've got the keys for the AHA, which is the ammo holding area. Back in my days, it was called the ammo dump, but New Army, we've changed. And I looked at him and I go, yeah, I do. And he says, good. He says, we got to resupply. And I said, yep, not a problem. He says, I need a volunteer to go with Master Sergeant Young. Jimmy Locke stands up and Will Gates stands up. And I just look at them and go, ooh. And it wasn't that was a bad thing, but there's both youngsters compared to myself, and the father side of me is saying, I can't take these guys. I can't take these guys. But the military side of me says, yep, we're going. So we did. I got in the back of an open cargo Humvee with Jimmy Locke, and we went down to the AHA and we loaded it up with ammunition. And we just started on one side of the fob, and we just started going around to the towers, passing out ammunition. Took care of business that way. And then we made it around to the other end of the fob at one of the entry control points, and there was a Marine having problems with his 249. It was M240. So Gates and I took it, got it down outside. We fixed it. We got it back up, got him back into the fight. And then we just continued driving around, supplying ammunition. And then we got back to the AHA, and there was a request coming down for certain types of ammunition. And we said, yep, we'll get that for him. So we go in, and the first thing we did before we did anything, the three of us, we just grabbed each other and held on to each other and hugged each other for about 20 seconds because it was still good to be alive. So we resupplied with ammo, and then call came down over the little radios that asking if we could bring water. Troops were, hot, thirsty out there in the battle. So we swung into my motor pool, and my KBR mechanic, one of them, he had heard the message about needing water, and he'd grabbed a forklift and he had a whole pallet of water waiting. So we threw that all in the back of the Humvee, and we started the rounds again, passing out water, ammo to those that needed that certain type of ammo we needed. And as we're making our second going around where the V-bed had blown up, Will Gates says to me, hey, there's a shoe in the middle of the road. And I go, big deal, there's a shoe in the middle of the road. He goes, it's got a foot in it. So we chuckled. I mean, there was a little humor in the middle of battle.
There always is.
And then I look over to the right, and our force protection was Echo Battery, Echo 210, Marine Field Artillery Battalion. And these guys were awesome. And a good friend of mine, Gunny Chambers, he's standing there smoking a Cuban cigar, and he's just pulling the pins on a grenade and just lobbing them up over his head, right over the wall. He's swapping them with the Iraqis one for one. The comical part was the ones coming over the wall, they were so excited they got close enough to throw them, They forgot to pull the pins.
That's actually pretty good. So did he throw back those ones too?
I don't know.
That'd be epic, actually.
Yeah. But again, like I say, here we are. We find humor in war, even when your ass is on the line.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So we made our rounds, resupplied people with water, and we resupplied one more round of ammunition. And now we're cutting up through the middle of the fob, and I look over, and coming right over us were two Apache gunships that they'd finally been able to get some air cover for us out of the airfield at Baghdad at the airport. And I looked at that and I said to Jimmy Locke, I said, I said, if my wife could only see me now, I said, I wouldn't have to worry about the terrorists killing me. I said, she'd kill me. I said, sitting here in the back of a Humvee in the middle of bullets and stuff going everywhere, traces here and there. And I said, here we are. But this went on for about 4 hours. And at the end of it, we were victorious. We, as I put it, that next morning, we got to see the sun come up one more time. But before we did all of that, Colonel Ray gave the order to stand down. That everything was going good. The Marines and the medics and stuff consolidated and took care of their wounded. A standby force was replacing the Marines on the wall because they were pretty well exhausted. And half a dozen of us that were out there doing all this between, the two teams we were running, we just went over and started filling sandbags and putting sandbags out because now we're in the business of force protection. And that was pretty much it.
It's funny. I said it's pretty much it. Like, hey, part of doing business. That's that. Yeah. I mean, so let me back up for a second if I could. So this entire battle was in the middle of the night, 4 hours, all at night.
Yeah, it started probably. I got my notes here actually. 7 o'clock. First rounds came in.
Okay. And that was that rocket you mentioned.
Yep.
Okay, that was that rocket. And did that rocket hit anywhere, wall or anything like that?
I don't know if that one hit. I don't think it did. I think it might have just hit in the middle of nowhere because if it had actually hit something, it would have destroyed it. We did see things destroyed. There was a KBR ice truck. It got hit by some mortar rounds. That burnt pretty good. There was a lot of rockets and stuff in the fob that came in that did not explode. We had a lot of unexploded ordnance all over the place. Mortar rounds came in. I think the mortar rounds did most of the damage.
Yeah. Now, if I remember correctly, was it over 200 to 300 insurgents that attacked?
Yeah, that's what they claimed. There was about 200 or 300 insurgents that attacked. They really couldn't get a good death count because they dragged their dead with them.
Yeah,
they didn't leave any bodies behind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so yeah. I mean, I remember the after action and stuff like that on our end. Just hearing about it all, and it's truly incredible that it goes to show though that those who weren't fighting were really the ones doing the work of like keeping everybody supplied, like the ammo, the water, whatever they needed to fix the weapons in the middle of a gun, in the middle of a massive firefight to keep them in the fight. I mean, that's some really amazing stories that, I don't think too many people know about that and about Abu Ghraib, about the background story of the boots on the ground and what they went through during that battle.
Yeah, it's pretty much been, you don't see about it, hear about it in any doctrine or anything, And the other thing that I was very proud about the fact was the 102nd had this attitude when we were there. We don't care who you are or what you are, as long as you're in a U.S. uniform. We're taking care of you, and we're going to supply you whatever you need. And it's just a one-team effort. And we had Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army Reserve, we had National Guard, we had Air National Guard with us. It didn't matter. It did not matter. Even the KBR folks that night. Sadly, the KBR folks can't carry a gun or use a gun, but most of them all had these Bowie knives and, machetes and stuff. They were ready to do battle to help us if they came over the wall. And I considered my KBR people that I worked with just as much of my military family as I did my brothers and sisters in uniform.
Yeah, that's funny the way you say it about the weekend, because that definitely resonated, in our FOB Spartan, where we were, because, I think I always tell you, like, the maintenance crew for the weekend were the best in the battalion because of how dedicated they were in the work to keep our trucks running, to keep everything moving, because of the importance of the mission. I mean, those guys, the Tucker brothers, all of them, they were nonstop working in that maintenance tent for every truck, no matter who it was. It didn't matter whether active duty, National Guard, Marines. They took them all. And I remember even the colonel's, Spartan 6, his personal Humvee that, we would take it there to get it fixed, to get it taken care of. And that's the thing. It's amazing that, it's gone. I've always felt that way, though, about the weekend. Even when we were, home, we just had this attitude of just, taking care of each other all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I myself, I learned that a long, long time ago when I first went to work full time for the Guard. When we used to go to drum and our equipment was so old and rickety and rackety, it would take us 2-3 days to get to drum. But as we convoyed to drum from Worcester, it didn't matter whose vehicles it was. We would stop for everybody and anybody, And I was kind of brought up that way. And all through my military career, I always felt that way. If I can help you, we're going to help you. We had Marines on our base, a great bunch of guys, like I was saying, and they had the hardest time understanding how we could put on Army parts on a Marine Humvee without doing paperwork. And I would just look at them and point on our chest and go, well, if you cover Marine and I cover Army, it says U.S., it says
U.S.,
us, right?
Exactly.
He says, yeah. I said, that's it. That's it right there. I said, I don't care. I said, you guys need help with your stuff. You can't. I said, rather than drag it back to the road to Fallujah, I said, just bring it in here,
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. But again, it shows, like you said, that was actually a great way to put it. Any of the services, you cover up U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Coast Guard, cover that up. All it says is U.S., and that's all that really matters. And that's, again, like I said, even the Marines on our base, same way. Like, maintenance guys would just, hey, bring your truck down if you need anything. No, it didn't matter. I want to transition to now coming home, right? After that whole battle and your time, I was coming home.
The first week, it was great, great to see the wife. Great, I got to see some of my kids. They came down to visit because my girls were all grown up and gone. I didn't sleep. I'd wake up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning in a panic mode. I couldn't find my pistol under my pillow, things like that. And I'd just get up and I would just, I'd be wide awake when my wife would come out. She goes, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. But yeah, I had a couple of weeks off and then I went right back to work, working for the Guard full time. But my biggest problem is I wanted to be that guy that walked out the door in 2003, because I was only home 6 months in between my deployments. And I so much wanted to be that guy. And at the time, I didn't realize that I would never, ever, ever be that guy again. And I'd go to work and I'd start getting reintegrated into things. People would come up to me and say, you all right? And I go, yeah, I'm fine. Why? And they said, because you're not being you. I said, what do you mean? And they'd say, well, you snapped at so-and-so, your attitude's this, and I go, no, I'm fine. But as time went on, more people told me that you're not being you and you really need to do something. And I just kind of blew it off. I'd come home, the wife would have dinner for me. and we talk a little bit, and she'd go to bed. I'd sit up. I wasn't sleeping. So then I said, well, you know what? Let me have a couple of drinks tonight. Maybe I can get relaxed. I can go to sleep. Well, a couple of drinks led into way too much drinking, and all I was doing, I wasn't sleeping, and I was getting up in the morning with a hangover to go to work. And
Yeah, that's. I mean, just when I came home, it was like similar. I remember my sister told me because I was living with my parents and my siblings I was the oldest, so they're all younger than me. I remember I don't remember, but I don't even remember this at all. But my sister told me she came downstairs. It was middle of the night. For some reason, she just woke up and wanted to check on me. And she came downstairs and she said I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, like just staring. And she said she walked me out of my room, turned the TV on with me, and just sat with me. And she said, like, I did not even say a word. You have that, which we know now, that 1,000-yard stare. And I don't even remember it. I don't, but she remembers it. You know what I mean? She's the one telling me about it. So we definitely changed when we came home, right? I mean, it's interesting to say that because I've had friends of mine that would tell me, I mean, you look like you've been through hell, man, because just the eyes tell everything, right?
Yep.
And I'd be just like you. Oh, no, I'm fine. It's all good. Yeah, I mean, I went to war and now I'm back. No, it's fine. I'm fine. But in reality, we're not fine, right? I mean, we learned that much later. It wasn't until, 2009 before I really started getting into like, you know what? Something's not right with me, man. Again, the anger, right? Snapping at people that I usually don't snap at.
Yep.
It was like a hard lesson to learn. And I think mostly, even back then, the Army just didn't know how to reintegrate us correctly versus what they're doing now. I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but when we came back to Fort Dix, it was like a 2-week reintegration to society before they sent you home.
Yep.
But, learning about it now, it's like, yes, that should not have been 2 weeks. That should have been at least 6 months of just really working on us, working on ourselves and doing the right things for the soldiers because we don't know any better, right? We're like, yeah, we're in the Army. We're doing this. We're doing that. But that's the one thing I learned. So when you guys came home, was it similar, like 2 weeks reintegration and then send you back?
Yeah, in fact, we didn't even have the full 2 weeks because they were going to keep us there for Christmas, and Colonel Ray said bullshit.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
So we might have been there a week and a half, if that, because they came into us and said, hey, be up at 5:00 tomorrow morning. We're getting breakfast at 5:30 and we're starting, processing out of this place at 6:00 tomorrow morning. They say, so we can get home for Christmas. So we really didn't have any time, to decompress. And not only that, they didn't do anything with you.
They didn't.
They didn't have any like seminars or anything set up, or if you're having problems, think about this or this, there was nothing. It's like, they couldn't wait for you to leave the base, get out of here.
Yeah. That's how I felt. I mean, they told us, I'll never forget, they told us it was the VA, I believe. It was a VA rep. It was all debrief. So it wasn't seminars. It was all debriefing, right?
Yep.
Just to get you demobbed, so to civilian listeners, there's mobilization and then there's demobilization. Demobilization, so what happens is when you come home and they do a bunch of debriefs with you, not really seminars, just kind of setting you back up to the U.S. versus, being overseas. And during demob at the time when we were there, it was a quick like, yep, here's this, do that, go to medical, do dental, do this, do that. And then as soon as you're green, quote unquote, once you got all those checkbox filled, it's like, see you later, and that's it. And, we would go out every night drinking. And in reality, it was damaging, right? Doing all that because we had so much going on that to us, it was just like, when you're with other soldiers you deployed, well, this is all normal behavior, right? It's not normal, right? It's not until you come home where it takes you a while and you're like, you know what? This really is not normal behavior.
No.
And so, like, how long did it take you before you realized, like, you know what, something's not right here?
Probably a good 6 months. And it's, I won't say it's comical, but one day when I first came home, I was getting all sorts of stuff in the mail, from the VA, from Vet Center, from this group, from that group. Reach out if you need help, And I'm going, yeah, all right, no, I don't need any of this junk. And then one day my brand new pickup truck, I backed up into the driveway, forgot that the wife's car was there, and I plowed right into her car. That didn't go over well at all. She come and she looked at me and she says, "You need help." I said, "Yeah, I know." So I was working in Springfield at the Armory in Springfield, and I said, I'm going to go check out this Vet Center film. So I finished my day at the Armory, punch it into the GPS. I'm 5 minutes from the Vet Center. I go down. Yep, I'm here. Yeah, okay, this is nice. Couldn't get out of the car, but I was there. So I came home. She said, "Did you go?" I go, "Yep." She says, "Well, how was it?" I said, "I don't know." And she says, "What do you mean?" I says, "I couldn't get out of the car." She says, "You need to sit down." And she says, "You need to call and make an appointment." And I go, "Yeah, okay, all right." So I gave it a couple of days. And I said, "Nah, I don't need this shit." Well, she grabbed me and we sat down and I made the phone call. And 3, 4 days later, I'm back in Springfield and I went over, parked the car. I went in and I checked in. And this guy come out and got me. He says, "Come on, let's go out back." And he says, "You have any trouble finding a place?" I said, "No, I've been here." He says, "What do you mean you've been here?" He says, "There's no sign, no records of you ever being here or anything." And I looked at him and I said, "I never said I came in the building, but I was in the parking lot, so I've been here." Again, it was kind of comical, but it broke the ice between the two of us. When he turned around and said to me, "You're not the first person to tell me this, and you won't be the last." And I had a real good counselor. We shared some of the same turf, but he'd been in Iraq. He was active duty, 10th Mountain, and he'd been in Iraq. In fact, we were in Iraq on my first tour at the same time. So I got some good help there. But it took a while. And it's like anything else. You can sit there and you can listen to people and you can talk and you can partake in it, but it goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't seem to sink in it takes a long time for it to sink in for me.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
for
I don't,
me, it took years, right? I mean, I'm sure similar. Like, it takes years for the stuff to sink in.
one of the one of the biggest things he told me when we were talking about dealing with people and different things, he says, "Remember this." He said, "It's your truck. You're driving your truck. You get to keep who and what you want in your truck, and you get to throw out who and what you want out of your truck." I heard it, but I didn't hear it. And when I was walking on the Appalachian Trail in 2014, when you hike 10, 15 miles a day and all you got is time to think about stuff, I really heard it. It came to, and I said, "Yep, it's time to start emptying out the truck and getting my life back and getting my life back together." I still live by that little saying because I always remember that, and I share that with people on Facebook in my fly tying classes, talking with vets. I said, "Look at life this way. Here's your truck." Oh, and a lot of them go, "Hey, it helps a little bit." And I said, "Hey, every little bit helps. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we.
I did the vet center with them for over a year. My counselor left because he got burnt out with it. And he says, I'm moving on. He says, I can't. He says, I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. So I had to pick up another counselor, and it was like not even a break in time between the two of them. She's great. I still see her to this day.
I mean, that's one thing is the toughest thing for us is seeking the help and getting the help, right? When we seek the help, sometimes we don't get the help, or we don't listen to the help, or, there's so many factors that come into it. But when we actually receive the help and we embrace it, it's a game changer, isn't it?
Definitely. It really is, and I used them for a while. And then when I went on the Appalachian Trail, I broke away because I was going to be gone for 6, 7 months. And, but that's where I really, between what I finally listened to them and other things, I really started to get my head on my shoulders a little bit better than what it had been. And then, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, one night, just before Veterans Day, my wife and I got the TV on, and Home Base in Boston is doing their fundraiser. And that's back when they used to do a video of a veteran and, and talk about what was going on and what brought him to home base and everything. And sadly, I sat there and watched one and saw me. I was watching me. This guy and I, as he talked, he was painting a good picture of me, and I just sat there crying. And my wife come over and she said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I got to finish watching this and we'll talk." So I told her, I said, "I just watched me on TV. I said, I guess I've been an asshole again." And she laughed. And she says, "What are you going to do?" I says, "I think Monday morning I'm going to call home base and talk to somebody." So I did. And they said, "Well, can you come in for an appointment?" And I said, "Yep." So I made the appointment. A friend of mine took me in. I met some of the team, and I met the psychiatrist, and we sat there and talked. And he says, "All right." He says, "Good interview." He says, "I got a lot of good notes." He said, "I got to talk with my team." He says, "We'll let you know in a week what we can do for you." Within a week, they called me and they said, "Yep, we definitely want to help you out. You can come in for the 2-week program, or you can come in, do it online, or come in on once a week and do it." So I chose the once a week thing to drive into Boston, as much as I hated it. But that ended up being part of my therapy. And I did that for 6 months with home base, and they said, "You ready to go out on your own?" I said, "Yeah, I think I can try it." And I shook hands with my doctor, and he says, "Remember, you can always come back for a tune-up." And I said, "Yep, thank you very much." And it was, the 6 months that I went there every Monday morning, it was a great experience. They helped me get through a lot of things that I was having issues with, and I can't thank them enough. And one of the other parts that was good for me going there was it made me realize that there's good people out there to help. I've talked to a lot of veterans about going to home base, and probably half of those that I've talked to have actually gone to home base and finished the program.
Good. I mean, we are a very stubborn type,
Oh, yeah.
so I mean we, one, at war, we refuse to die. I mean, that's very apparent. But at the same time, we also refuse. I think what it is, you always hear it kind of this an analogy, like we're the superheroes, right?
Yep.
So we're the ones that carry that burden. We're the ones that have to fight for others and fight for our country and our families and stuff like that. But we all learn over time as we get older and wiser, probably. We learn that we need to also help ourselves, right? Because we also need to realize that, just like the analogy of the truck, right? They for me, I use the rucksack because I always do the tough ruck every year.
Yep.
So it's the rucksack. It's sharing that load with your fellow veterans, with fellow law enforcement, whatever it might be, sharing that load, or even taking out some of that load and giving it to a fellow veteran. Or like, hey, can you share this with me? And it's just one of those really powerful type analogies like yours, or even the rucksack. Like, we are extremely resilient and extremely passionate about serving our country, or serving, serving our country more than anything else, that we tend to forget about serving ourselves. to help ourselves after years. I mean, close to 43 years of service for you. I mean, that's 42 years of just experiences, and especially your last 10 years of deployments and stuff like that. That's a lot of stuff to deal with and to just, shoulder and be like, everything's fine.
Yeah, it is. But, like I say, I had some good help to kind of help straighten me out. Project Healing Waters, fly fishing group for disabled veterans. I never knew how to fly fish or tie flies in my life. I've been with them for almost 14 years now, and it's made a huge impact on my life. And I've moved on from not only just being a student, I'm now a mentor. I'll sit in there and work with veterans in that group, teaching them how to tie flies, how to cast. For me, it's all part of giving back.
So that's I know you shared with me a story during one of your fly fishing classes of this autistic individual, because my son's autistic, and I think I shared a video and wrote something about, how true it is, and how, we have to see things through their eyes. And I think was this individual a veteran? Okay, he was a veteran. Okay, so to me, it's like you did more for him than you would think, right? Because of being able to be that mentor to help him learn the craft of tying a fly. I mean, have you seen? I mean, I'm sure. How many, off the top of your head, do you know how many veterans you actually worked with doing that?
This is our 4th year of doing it, and then with this group, there's been 9, probably 40 or 50. Just in this group over at the MVOC. And then at the Project Healing Waters, I couldn't even begin to count how many I've worked with over there, because they come and go. Yeah.
Wow. But that's the thing. That's 40 to 50 interactions with other veterans that you've helped. And in turn, as you told me, they helped you.
Well, definitely.
Right? It's a give and take within the veteran community when you do these events or you do these classes. It's like when I did the writing workshop here for 22 Mohawks, and the veterans here, we had about a dozen of them, and at the end of the 4 weeks, you just learn so much about them, and they help you and you help them, and it's just an amazing dynamic of the back and forth. And I'm sure you see that on your end
all the time. I would have never, ever thought in my lifetime that I'd be sitting there with this young Marine, autistic as he is, and working with somebody like that. I never, ever thought I'd be doing that. And it's so self-satisfying. Last week at class, he came over and shook hands goodbye with my buddy who runs the program. I work for him. And he thanked us very much for the class. And he looked at me and he says, he said, I never knew a sergeant major as easygoing and as nice as you can be. He says, all my sergeant majors I had in the Corps, he said, number one, I never talked to them because I was scared to death of them. He says, number two, the only time they ever talked to me if they were putting a boot up my ass. So he says, I like you. And I said, thank you very much. I said, I try hard to be a good sergeant major. I said, I just try hard to be a good person.
That's the thing. It's one thing, I think, to be a leader, you need to be a good person. Like I think it needs to be a requirement to be a good person, because to be a leader and to mentor and to, push people, or even to kick someone's ass, right, for fucking up or whatever, right? But there's a certain way to do it as a human, right? As a person, as a man, as a leader. I can only imagine that kid, that young Marine who's autistic, thinking of my son like the way he is. Like, he must have been petrified of those sergeant majors, because he wouldn't know how to respond, or he'd respond in really bad ways.
Right.
So I'm glad that he met someone like you to show him that, no, there's actually good leaders out there, that you can talk to.
Yep, there sure is, And it's like, as I worked my way up the ranks in my career, I used to watch E7s, and I go, yep, when I become an E7, I know how I want to be, and I'm not going to be like that asshole over there screaming and yelling and just, treating people like, they're secondhand citizens and stuff. And it was the same thing when I became a first sergeant and I became the sergeant major. And when I joined the Guard in 1970, my father was my first sergeant, and he gave me some good advice that I lived with my whole career. And it was, never forget where you came from. And so my
Fortunately,
whole
there's some leaders that they forgot that they were that private or they were that second lieutenant or whatever it was.
Yep, for sure. And it's like when I was a first sergeant and I first took over a golf company there in Quincy, and I'd have to, get ready to discipline, the E2, 3, or 4 for messing up. I'd get them in my office and I'd look at them and I'd stop and think about what was I doing when I was in E3 or when I was in E4 in the Guard. So I used to just look at them and say, hey, this is your get out of jail free card. I said, get out of here. Don't come back unless to say good morning or good afternoon. I said, whatever they did wrong, I said, it's forgot. I said, go to work.
That's awesome. That's the thing. Like, I remember when I first became a sergeant, and downstairs in Quincy, we would always sweep up the floor downstairs under the drill area, and I remember I had my broom just cleaning with the troops, something that I do. And I remember an E6 came up to me. I forget who it was. He's like, hey, why are you cleaning up? I'm like, because that's what we do. And he's like, no, man, you're an NCO now. You don't have to do that. I'm like, no. Like, my guys are doing it. I'm doing it with them. Like, I told him I'm not going to be that guy. So because you remember where you came from. And your dad is right. You as a leader, you got to be in the trenches with your men, right? That's just the way it is, right? To be a leader, and you can't lead from the top down, right? You got to be on the ground with them.
Definitely, you definitely do. I can remember one time we were down at Fort Dix. The 101 was firing down there, and Ski's ammo platoon came right up on the firing line, and we told the gunny, the chief of smoke, you guys keep doing your thing. And Ski got all his drivers, and I jumped in. I was a first sergeant at the time, and we formed a Congo line, and we unloaded the boxes of ammunition behind every gun. And for me, it was great because, number one, I like doing stuff like that. But at the same time, I got to talk to the kid beside me, to the left of me, the right of me. Hey, how's it going? What's going on? If you got a job at home, and it's just one more thing, as you put it, be down in the trenches with the kids and show them you can still do it and you like doing it. And my whole career was like that. When we used to go out on, training crews on the 88, get down in the mud and the goop and the guck with the guys. I love doing stuff like that as the master sergeant. I used to tell people when I was a first sergeant, hey, I said, it's my company. If I want to go get dirty with them, I'm going to go get dirty with them. Who's going to tell me I can't?
Yeah. One memory I have of you, actually, this was when I was first in the unit as a young private and private first class. And I remember it was in the mess hall down at Camp Edwards in the Cape. And, we were tasked, just me and a couple other guys were tasked with, setting up the mess hall, getting ready for breakfast. The cooks were doing their thing. Our job was to, the salt, the pepper, the silverware, whatever, like just to have that out and ready. And you were there with like a couple other NCOs. And I remember I looked at the other privates that were with me and I was like, hey guys, let's get this. And I remember you looked over at the other NCOs and then looked back at me and looked at the other NCOs and you're like, hey, who's, and sure enough, I think couple months later or something, I got specialist, and then a few months after that, a little bit after that, before I deployed, I became a sergeant. I'm like, holy crap. So, that's like a memory I have of you. Like, to me, you were like, oh shit, this dude's a go-getter, and because right away I just had the guy, because we were just standing there. Right. And I'm like, well, someone got to take command of it. Like, hey, let's go. Let's start working.
There you go.
We got things to do. But Joe, it's what's, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but man, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, especially Abu Ghraib and your recovery, we'll call it, to show that we are resilient. We are able to bounce back, so to speak, to get us to a good place. And it takes a lot of work. It's not easy, right? Some people, like I went into it thinking it was easy. It's not.
No,
we all
it's
have
not.
our ups and downs. I still have ups and downs, even to this day. And you were mentioning, the ups and downs are still there. But, we learn to cope with it and we move on.
Yeah, we sure do. As far as, things still being there and the ups and downs, never ever in my wildest dreams did I figure at 65 years old that my wife and I would be in couples counseling because of my military career. When we finally both realized that it wouldn't hurt us to go, and again, God bless the Vet Center in Springfield, Mass. They had a great couples counselor there, and he probably saved our marriage. And we did that. He had to leave, unfortunately, and another one slid right in. And you would have never known that anybody left. And we did that for about a year. And then COVID came along and no more going to Springfield to see anybody. So we figured, well, you know what? Rather than doing it on a Zoom meeting, we'll just try it and see how things work out. If not, we can go call them up and say, we want to get back and do it with the Zoom. It helped the both of us out, and it made me realize a lot of the things that was going bad with the marriage, or things that weren't 100% right. It was still things from me being in the military. And the biggest thing he made me realize, first visit we saw him, he said, you got to make the divorce final. And I go, what do you mean I can make the divorce final? He says, you've got two mistresses. He says, you've got the Army, and he says, you've got your wife. He said, you're no longer in the Army. He says, you got to make the divorce final. And I looked at him and I said, after 42 years, you think it's going to be easy? He said, no, but he says, you got to work on it. And he says, and I'll help you work on it. Again, we got through it. And like I say, here we are, been married 52 years and hoping for at least another 50.
That's amazing. Amazing. It's awesome to hear that you're doing well, and, the ups, like I said, the ups and downs, but, you're still, as we say in the military, Charlie Mike, you're still going, still doing it. So if you want to hang out for 1 minute, I'm going to do an outro, and then me and you will wrap up in a minute. All right.
Yep. No problem.
All right. Again, thank you so much for jumping on, Joe. It was a great conversation, and we wouldn't be able to do it without our sponsors, supporters, our listeners. And as always, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram, all your listening platforms for podcasts. And we are still, I've got all kinds of guests lined up into December. I think you guys are going to have a real pleasure listening to people like Joe and others as we continue this year, kind of the theme of resilience and mindset on this podcast. And again, thank you to all our sponsors, our supporters. Remember, head over to AAA Police Supply. That's aaapolicisupply.com, and order whatever you want for your law enforcement needs, and use the U code Sapient 2025 to get 10% off your entire order. And hop over to Havoc Journal. I'm still writing and still doing stuff with them. And, they always have awesome articles published by all kinds of people, from cops to firefighters to veterans to doctors to you name it, and all relevant towards what's going on, whether it's in the military community, law enforcement, first responder community, even public affairs, geopolitics, you name it, they write about it. head over to Havoc Journal, and everybody, stay safe and stay safe.